Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Paranormal: The New Normal. And this is a first for this show, and I am very happy it's happening. I have yet to have an actor on this show, or a director, or a filmmaker. Well, that's okay. I'm sorry, that's not true. I've had a filmmaker on before. Sorry, Chris. But I've yet to have a combo of all three together. So that's a first for sure. And my guest today is Bo Roberts, director, filmmaker, and actor as well. He's a man of many talents. How you doing today, Bo?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. How are things on your end? You told me about the unfortunate lawn mowing incident.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the lawnmower incident was not fun. It was definitely not fun. And for my listeners, because I haven't just happened today, I literally almost took myself out with a lawnmower by backing into a pile of logs. And let's just say it's a cut up leg, cut up arm, and a sore tailbone. And I almost got my legs cut to shreds today. So it's been a interesting thing, and I am in a little bit of pain, but thankfully Twisted Tea should help with that. Hopefully, along with some green herbs. But so Bo has a new movie which I believe is coming out or did already release.
Yes, it has come out. It's currently on Tubi, two more channels called Loku and Momento or Momentu. And then it was actually just picked up by Amazon Prime this past Wednesday. So that's currently being onboarded. Movies being sent to them, the artwork or the poster and the movie trailer. So yeah.
That's awesome because once it's on Prime, I'll definitely be checking it out because I don't have a. I mean, I'm not a fan of Tubi personally, but I don't like ads during my movies. But
Yeah,
I when it,
so
when it, when it comes
I get
when
it
it, when it comes when it comes to Prime, I'll totally be watching it.
for
Which
sure. Yeah.
why don't you give the listeners a little bit of a preview of what your movie's about, as much as you're willing to give away? I don't want you to give away any spoilers you don't want to.
Gotcha. So this movie is called The Great Awakening, and this is my COVID movie without it being a COVID movie. I decided in 2020 during lockdown, I'm just going to pass the time and come up with a new script and or a new idea, and I did that and worked with my writer Joey to really flesh it out and stuff. But the the idea of what the movie is, it's not about contracting COVID. It's not about the vaccine turning you into a monster. It's not lockdown being mass enslavement of the human race and stuff that's very kind of on the nose, directly related to COVID. For me, I relied on a documentary I watched called Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue. And this documentary has all of the heavy hitters from Wes Craven to George A. Romero and just one banger after another on screen talking about how they just made sense of society and they got very symbolic with kind of what was happening during that time in society. So it's some examples you have post World War II in the 50s. A lot of movies had an apocalyptic atomic bomb scare theme, and you get to the 60s with drug experimentation, The Summer of Love, Woodstock, and a lot of movies, carried a theme of like some pot smoking hippie kidnapping daddy's little angel. And then you get to the 70s when the Summer of Love ended, love ran out, and uh, this country had, Watergate, Vietnam happening, and just a lot of kind of raw emotion happening. And that's when movies turned ultra violent. So enter in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff like that. So I took that principle of, okay, what does 2020 mean to me? So COVID is introduced, and then I'm hearing stuff about lockdown, but not just for us, like the entire world, people that, we never agree with, all of a sudden we agree everyone's going into lockdown, except for a couple states here and there. But yeah, so that, and then all of a sudden, murder hornets were on the news, and then they just kind of vanished. And the CIA released over 10,000 documents confirming interactions with UFOs, and that wasn't even trending on social media. That you had all of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations and rioting, and then you had a very turbulent election year, and just like one curveball after another, to the point that I had no idea what was happening, so or what was coming next. So that's what turned into my common thread for my movie, which is to summarize the year 2020 with one word, which is uncertainty. So from creating the story to the way it was shot, the way I polished it in post, and teamed up with my buddy Casey, and he was doing sound design and post work in general on it. But the entire effort of every stage of the movie is to recreate the emotion of uncertainty. So as you watch it, something may make sense of, okay, the scene is a girl taking out the garbage, but the way I decided to, have that play out on screen, there's a lot of stuff that you're like, why is this happening? Why is she wearing diamond earrings and a ball gown with a white shawl? And, there's a lot of stuff that you're just like, I know what's happening, but the way that it is happening, it just seems kind of weird. So that's very intentional, again, to provoke the emotion of uncertainty.
Which I kind of get that scene, because people were doing a lot of crazy things when lockdown first happened, just because they actually had to go out of their house to the front of their driveway. And that was like the most that some people got to go for a month, or like a couple of weeks at least.
Yeah.
I mean, America was nothing compared to the rest of the world with the lockdown, because we still got to go grocery shopping. We still got to do everything else because we could, because we needed to. But yet I know over in Italy, they were completely locked down and they were not able to leave their homes. I mean, there was all those videos in the news of them all singing out their windows just to try to have some companionship with people. But which is an adorable story on top of everything. That was an adorable story. So but yeah, I mean, COVID definitely is something that I expect we're going to see a lot more movies based around in the future. I can't say I've really seen one that is based on it yet. I can't say I really have. I mean, I know people say that movie Parasite that came out and won an Academy Award like the year before COVID was very close to COVID, and it's kind of weird. But
interesting. Yeah, like I've seen, a few, because in doing research for the movie, the way that the story actually began for me was I started off by making a parody movie. Like if you're a fan of horror movies, you probably watched the comedy movie called Scary Movie, and it's just So the ideas I came up with were very intentional on, like, okay, what's a COVID movie? Oh, haunted house. You don't want to stay in the house because it's haunted, but you can't leave because of lockdown. And oh yeah, there's an idea. So how can I play on it? So I was actually creating a story that was gonna be a parody of all of the movies, but my intention was to put that movie out before all of the COVID movies came out. So I was doing that, and then once I changed the boyfriend's role to him studying to become a pastor, because back to it, I was trying to make sense of, okay, since I'm throwing the kitchen sink at this script idea, I need to have somebody get possessed. So how can I open the door for that? Oh, well, let's have somebody studying and going into religion and stuff like that. And just as a quick sidebar, when I decided that the boyfriend is studying to become a priest, I made him study online, because a lot of news headlines came out about a lot of college students that were just infuriated about having to spend so much money for college, but they couldn't actually go to the campus to essentially get what they paid for. So all of a sudden they pay, an exuberant amount of money to go to school, and now they have to do homeschooling. And so that was a big thing. So that's why the boyfriend is actually doing homeschooling to learn how to become a pastor. So yeah.
Interesting. And yeah, I actually, during COVID, I lost my job during COVID because our business basically died at the beginning of it. And by the time they issued the lockdown that all non-essential businesses must let their employees either work from home or get laid off. And my boss was strictly against working from home because he thought people would just slack off. Ironically enough, I work from home now with my new job. So, but
Jeez. So it worked out.
it worked out, but I don't know. But I mean, it just worked. It worked out. And so I understand that because I was basically at home for 6, 7 months. Like my family wouldn't let,
Mm.
like our family didn't want us coming over because they were avoiding each other basically because they didn't want to spread anything if they had anything. I mean, everybody
Right.
was in that true state of panic,
Hmm.
which I mean, this is I mean, that's why this relates to paranormal in a way because the paranormal has a tendency to bring states of panics around. I mean, go back to Momo, the Missouri Monster, back in the 60s, 70s, 40s, whenever it was. I
Hmm.
mean, go to the Mothman incident in the 70s in West Virginia, Point Pleasant. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just all these creatures when they appear bring states of panic, and that's why I thought this topic would be good to relate to that because COVID was our newest state of panic in the last few years. And even now, I mean, it's still going on, but it's not talked about now because as much because one, vaccines, and but now it's talked about are the vaccines bad for you? Which that's a whole nother
Hmm.
topic I'm not going to get into in this show. But
Yeah.
and now the newest panic is monkeypox,
Yep.
which I mean I'm not too worried about it. I mean, especially now that I work at home, but I mean I was working still in retail markets every day when that first started, and I still wasn't worried about it because as far as I know, it wasn't really spread around this part of the United States yet. But I guess now
Right.
it's getting worse. I don't know. I don't follow the news. In my mind, if you want to be depressed, you watch the news. If you don't want to be depressed, just watch something. Watch a good movie. Watch a good TV show.
Hmm.
Which, speaking of that, how did you get into this business? That's what I'm kind of curious about. Like, what made you want to be a actor then turned filmmaker director?
Gotcha. Yeah, so I got into it because I moved down to Florida. At the time, I was going to school, majoring in psychology, had a career in law enforcement, was doing the whole cage fighting thing, even. And then, yeah, met some girl on spring break, wound up moving down to Florida to be with her. And then it came down to it on, okay, what should I do for money? Because I left, my structure that I've known my entire life. What should I do? So I had a couple, odds and end jobs, just trying to make sense of kind of what stuck out to me and what direction I wanted to go with. And then I actually got fully trained and showed up to work on the first day to be a door to door Kirby vacuum cleaner salesman.
Oh boy.
And yeah, and I I remember this guy pulled up and he was working like the same area as me. So I walked over to him and said, "Hey, so uh, I was informed that these people are interested in the vacuum cleaner, but before they drop like a couple $1,000s, they're wanting to do a test drive on it. Is that accurate?" And he's like, "Nah, dude, you're cold calling. These people have no idea that you're coming, so you're gonna have the door slammed in your face a lot." And I said, "Oh, thank you for the heads up." I, went back to the office, handed in the gear and everything, and then went home. And at that time, my girlfriend's friends were saying, "Oh, he's super handsome. He could model and this and that." And I'm like, "No, I'm a fighter and X, Y, and Z." Well, after I came home after abandoning being a door to door vacuum cleaner salesman, I was like, "All right, honey, how do I get into this whole model stuff?" And so, uh, you know, we went online, submitted some pictures, and all of a sudden that got me working in Tampa Bay and Orlando, and going on online to see various castings and auditions and whatnot. I began seeing acting auditions. So that's something that was always of interest to me, but I just kind of assumed, oh, I'm just that guy from the Midwest that thinks being on TV would be cool. So, but now I'm actually being exposed to it, and it's something that I can actually pursue and see, what comes of it. So I did a short film and then had a bit part in a couple feature films. And then I instantly knew that's the direction I wanted to go in. So I passed on offers. So I went down to South Beach, Miami to kind of run with the Bulls, so to speak, sign with a big agency down there. And but then I passed on offers to go to Cape Town, South Africa, so I could go straight to New York and still work as a model and take care of my overhead, but also start actually going to acting school and training and actually making sense of how to do it the right way. So that's what got me into it.
All right, I mean, that's a fascinating story as hell. Because I mean, it's funny because I bought a Kirby vacuum off one of those sales guys that goes door to door, and
Yeah,
I feel, I mean, no, I mean, okay, well, pun intended, but that's a job that really just sucks. Like
yeah,
it literally does. Because I mean, I could never be a door to door salesman for anything because getting the door slammed in my face many times, I would do the same thing. I'd walk back in the office and be like, "Yeah, I'm done. Screw this." I mean, that's right up there with being like a Jehovah's Witness going door to door because it's just not fun because people are going to slam door in your face if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, they're just going to treat you like shit because they think you're a nuisance. Like some people.
yeah.
I I mean, I politely turn people away. At least I know a lot of people do too, but or they just pretend they're not home and don't answer the door. But I
Mm-hmm.
I actually had that. I have a Kirby vacuum in my basement. Paid a good $1,200 for it, but
Nice.
yeah, I think we don't even use it anymore because it's such a pain in the ass to use it. But they're so complicated for a vacuum, it's ridiculous. But
Yeah, there's a lot of parts that you can take apart with it, and attachments, and it's a whole thing. It's a big procedure for sure.
oh, I used it for carpet cleaning once, like with the whole like shampoo
Yeah,
feature. The thing they give you to put the water in is so small, you have to constantly change it like every couple of feet. It's ridiculous. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I'd have better luck dumping a bucket of water on the floor and then doing it. Like Jesus. Like it's just, but so yeah, you had some roles here and there, which I mentioned this off camera to him, but I'll mention it now because I recognized him from Mindy Project because I saw that in his IMDb page and I was like, I've seen every episode of that show. I can picture this. And I looked up, I read the episode description. I'm like, yep, I remember the episode now. And I remember seeing his face on it. And he also was American Horror Story, but apparently in full makeup. So I couldn't recognize him on that. But I did watch that whole season. So I'm sure I saw the scene he was in. That was a,
oh yeah.
that was a good season besides the whole guinea pig in the microwave thing. That kind of made me sad because I had guinea pigs. But
Well, yeah, and to me, it's like anytime you have like it's and most people I know in the horror community, it's like they're totally fine with seeing people get chopped up, and even if they don't deserve it, if they're truly a victim, anytime you even look at an animal the wrong way, it turns people off. Like it's a very touchy situation. So like why it still shows up time to time. I'm like I don't know.
well, it's the shock factor. They want people to be like, "Oh my God, no!" and start like some people start tearing up over and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want that shock factor. That's why they do it. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, I'm a juggalo, so I love clowns. But I was kind of mad that whole season there was no reference to juggalos. I gotta say that. I've been waiting for a chance to say that on a recording forever, and I finally get a chance to say it. But
Awesome.
and okay,
Oh,
the last thing I want, the
oh,
last thing I'll ask about that though.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I was just going to show you on Pandora. For whatever reason, yesterday I went to the ICP station on Pandora, and that's what I've been going to the gym to for the past 2 days. So,
Oh, damn! Talk about synchronicity here. I mean, that's just
right, yeah,
we
that's crazy.
couldn't have planned that if we tried. And I will say, I mean,
Mhm.
you do not look like that person to listen to ICP. So that's just a shock. I mean, juggalos kind of have like a look about them. I mean, I am one, so I can say that, but they do. I mean, we just simply do. I've been to enough concerts to see that, but respect, and they are a good workout. Friggin' music.
That
I used to love going to the gym to that.
Yeah, and they're yeah, and they're hyper talented. Like they definitely do the type of rap that I'm into, to where a lot of times they're injecting comedy and humor into what they're saying. So it's crazy. And for me, I'm from southern Indiana, so I remember when Juggalos would come through to do the like extreme hardcore wrestling matches and stuff. So there was a time that and I think ICP directly, they used to do that stuff, to where it's like
Oh yeah.
having a attack match and whatnot. So yeah, like I'm not sure if it was them directly, or if it was fellow juggalos, or just fans of them. But yeah, there was like juggalos that used to come through my area, and I would go watch them get body slammed on tacks, and they had bring your own weapon night, to where people would take like a fluorescent light tube and hand it to the wrestler, and they would smash it on a guy's face. And
Oh yeah. I mean, that was
insane.
JCW. That was JCW, Juggalo Championship Wrestling, Championship Wrestling, which and and
Nice.
yeah, ICP was directly involved in that. They, until I think 2005 or four, somewhere around there. Until then, they were actually wrestling in matches, like until then. But then they got
Yeah,
older, and they said like they would return for one or two more after that. But they basically said at that point, like, our bodies can't take this anymore. Like, we need to pass it
yeah.
on to
It's
the. And I mean, they were on WCW and then WWF back in the day in the late '90s.
mhm.
I mean, yeah, I mean they. There's a funny story in their book about them being in a at SummerSlam '99 or '98, whatever it was, where they performed the Oddity theme song. They had a match, and they were in the dressing room with Undertaker and Stone Cold.
That's
So
awesome.
they there's a funny story where they were terrified of these two like mega stars being in the same like dressing room as them. I mean, it's just especially the Undertaker.
Nice.
That's just that's intimidating as could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, wow. Of all things we were going to talk about tonight, I never imagined it would be ICP and being a Juggalo. That's just mind blowing. But so you did all these roles, and then what did it mean to you to finally make like your own movie? Like to finally say, I can do what all these directors are doing. I can make a movie and make it amazing. Like what that mean to you when you did that?
It honestly, it means the world, with the more reviews coming in, and with people watching it. It's landing exactly how I wanted to where, like, thus far, the worst feedback I'm getting is actually how I plan on scaling up in my business, to where people are saying, yeah, I watched it, and I can tell he knows what he's doing, but he didn't have the budget to do it the way he wants to. And I'm wanting to take a screen capture of that quote and show it to investors and be like, look, people are like, they're on board with what I'm doing. They get what I'm going for, but they see that I just need more money to do it. So that's like the worst feedback that I've received on it. Yeah. And for me, it goes back to the horror community, to where, more times than not, you're not watching something that's like a $10 million production. Like, vast majority, it's like indie filmmakers, and the indie sense of, like, you're talking about maybe some hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not talking about millions of dollars. So, and in my experience, the horror community, it's a lot more forgiving on a lack of budget, as long as that the scares happen the way they do, and this and that. And but with that being said, this movie, it does land more as kind of a sci-fi thriller that has horrific aspects to it. On kind of a scary scale, I would give it maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10. So it's not very scary, but this is my first official dry run, going from shooting maybe 15 short films, and actually scaling up to shoot something full length. That now I'm going after distribution, money's coming in. Now I'm doing some marketing for doing the dance properly. This is my first experience doing that.
Which, yeah, I mean, and the fact that you did it, I mean, so many people say they want to be filmmakers, they want to make their own movies, but the amount of them actually don't ever do it because they reach an obstacle they
Mm-hmm.
can't overcome, or they don't get the funding, which is usually a huge problem, and they can't make it the way they want to make it, so they give up. I mean, I personally am a huge fan of Kevin Smith, and I
Hmm.
don't know if you are. Like,
Oh yeah.
I respect the hell out of him for what he did with his career. He
Hmm.
he, I love that he maxed out like 17 credit cards to make his first movie, and then paid them all off with the profit. Like that's just perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Uh-huh.
But and so I mean, I would think. I mean, at least to me, if I wanted to make a movie, that's like my idol. So I would be like trying to reach out to him, like, help me, please help me. And I think I believe he just bought a theater in New Jersey, and he's trying to start his own film school there as well, which is interesting as could
Nice.
be.
Yeah,
But
definitely
which
is.
I'm so I believe you said earlier that you had a great awakening.
Or that's the title of the movie. Yeah, so the movie
Oh,
title is called, yeah, the title of the movie is called The Great Awakening, and it's um and that goes back into the emotion of uncertainty to where uh in today's age, when people talk about a great awakening, they I think most really connected to kind of a spiritual uh aspect, to where it's like opening the third eye, ascending to a into the fourth dimension, and stuff like that. Whereas when you go way back in history, the Great Awakening, is like the Christian Crusades, and it's like, hey, you follow my God or else. But then something that happened in between was it's like the 70s. A lot of people view that as another spiritual awakening, to where now you have just a huge influx of various thoughts and various beliefs of it. So um, you know yeah, so it's like you have this person that believes this, that person that believes that, and yeah, so titling it The Great Awakening just seemed appropriate.
which is interesting because I mean, this is a paranormal show, so I've talked to a handful of psychics and mediums over the last couple months, and
Hmm.
they all agree that in the last 5 years there's been a spiritual awakening on Earth that
Hmm.
more and more people are getting in touch with their spiritual side and realizing they have abilities they didn't realize they had earlier in their life, that they can communicate with spirits possibly, or some of them believe they can talk to angels, which I'm not going to deny that they can't, because who am I to say that? I don't know. It could highly be possible. I'm agnostic. I don't believe in a lot of things, but I do believe that's possible to talk to divine beings of some kind. I hate to
Hmm.
put the word angel in it, but so yeah, I mean, The Great Awakening is a good idea for a movie right now, especially because of this. And they say that COVID also enhanced the awakening a lot, because people being stuck at home, they start taking online classes on how to astral project themselves, on how to try to communicate with the dead, on how to like just do everything spiritual by themselves because they were stuck at home and bored. So
Hmm.
the spiritual awakening has been a big thing. I mean, do you believe in the possibility of psychic work, medium work?
uh, yeah, and that goes in line with how they say that we use such a very small percentage of our brain. So yeah, it makes, to me, I think it's very plausible that if you go from using 10% up to 10.1, what exactly is possible? Like, you don't have to go all the way up to 85%, but if you go up just a few percentage points, it would be very interesting, and that's where it, to me, I make sense of it with how, if you have like a dog or a cat, or if you have a young child that is making sense of the world, but nobody's telling them this isn't real, this is what reality is. If you have a child that's just being, it's interesting how, oftentimes you see them like looking at something and like following it around the room. And that or yeah, there was this one time in this house I lived in Indiana. I was playing red light, green light with my sister, and she was very young, and it was red light, green light, and she kept walking, kept stopping, and then I said red light, and she looked at me, and then she went, and she sat down on her knees and put her hands up like this and said, "I'm a dog now." And I was like, "Who are you talking to?" And she said, "The man that's usually in my bedroom at night." And I was like, "What?" So I asked my dad about it, and he's like, "Yeah, she talks about how there's this guy who doesn't have legs, and it's like he's wearing a dark coat and a big hat, and he's hangs out like near the ceiling in her bedroom." She's made that comment, and and when so he had the house because when I took off to Florida, I handed him the keys, and he used to kind of taunt me because I told him the house is haunted, and he's like, whatever, it's your first house, and you're now out on your own in this net, whatever. I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, it is. Well, after he moved into it, he called me up and apologized, and he said everything you told me that's been happening, it's now happening to me, to where it's like if I'm downstairs, I hear somebody walking in the hallway, and it happens consistently enough that it doesn't even bother me. I used to get freaked out and go up and look for an intruder. Now it's just common, and every time I get in the shower and the water hits me, the doorbell rings. It's clockwork. It always does. And yeah, and like I have probably about four more stories that happen in that house. But yeah, so my sister used to see this guy in the house, and then I had a purebred German Shepherd named Onyx. Every inch of the dog was just jet black, and yeah, sometimes you just see the dog like following something, and so to me, yeah, it's like humans grow up and then they're instructed what's real and what's not real. So to some people that still believe, and then you still have like some people that still believe, and then maybe they tap into that again, not 10%, but maybe 10.1, 10.2. I think a lot of things are interesting and very plausible.
Okay, well, I so regret that I didn't open the show with my usual question of have you had any experiences like that? I so wish I did that to begin the show, but and all right, so to break this down, because a couple things in this one. So the creature, creature, I don't want to call it a creature, the entity that your sister describes seeing all the time with the big hat and the cloak, or not cloak,
Mm-hmm.
but jacket. That is actually a very famous case called Hat Man. a
Okay.
lot of people a lot of people see the Hat Man, especially children. A lot of children see the Hat Man, and it's a well-known. No one knows, exactly what it is, of course, because no one ever can. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just it's a type of spirit that likes to hang around houses, especially children. Like for some reason, they'll stand in doorways, stand in corners, and stare at people, and they don't ever do anything more than that. Sometimes they'll walk towards somebody, but they will never like actually interact with somebody. Usually they're there for like a scare factor almost. Like no one, I can't explain it. No one can really explain it. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that think they can, but who knows?
Right.
Hi, Julie. Thank you for watching. Oops, did I click it twice? Yeah, there. Okay. Appreciate you watching. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because the house I live in, I've told this story 1,000 times. It has the people who built the house still live here. The couple who built this house in '64 still live here, even though they're both passed on. And
Mm-hmm.
I have two purebred mastiffs, and the older one will always like when we used to actually let her like in the living room and stuff before they ruined the carpet. Um, she would come in and she would start just barking at random places in the room where there's nobody, and like especially
Mm-hmm.
at the mirror. Like if like she saw, and then she'll start sniffing around and barking more, and you can't get her to calm down. Like you take her outside, she'd still be barking her head off in fear. And
Right.
now they sleep in our basement now in their crates because they were making a mess of the kitchen. So we put them in the basement for now. They're getting moved to the garage soon, and they just like in the basement sometimes. Like we'll be watching TV 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, and they just start barking their heads off like something's there, but there's nothing there that we can see. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my wife saw some stuff too, and my wife can sense them. She's a little bit sensitive towards these things because she grew up in a haunted house, basically. And like her family has seen things here too. I'm lucky enough that I don't see things except for out of the corner of my eye. But I did have one talk to me when I had investigators here back in December. But I'm not going to go into that full story because my listeners know that story by heart by now. But I had one of them say thank you in my ear when I was talking to the investigators about everything I did for the house. So
Nice.
that's a mind
Which,
blowing experience.
yeah, which to me that's awesome because yeah, like that. You know, I've been sitting down watching TV and instantly I would just be in 100%, you know, like fight or flight mode. Like what's there's something very dangerous, very close to me, and it was like you know, it felt like what a tiger was 5 feet away, you know, staring at me, and I didn't know you know why that was happening. That stuff that's not cool. But in the house that I lived in, I actually named it Jester because it whatever was happening, it would just you know mess with me. And like I'm downstairs vacuuming, and it was Sunday, so every window, every door is open. You know, change out the air and stuff like that. And for whatever reason, my stereo that's only meant to interact with the TV because it was down in the basement, so the radio signal doesn't reach anything. So it's just set to that TV auxiliary thing. And all of a sudden, radio turned on, and it was switched to the radio function. Went to the AM channel, went in between stations, and the volume got turned all the way up. And I'm like, so I'm vacuuming, and all of a sudden, surround sound was just nothing but white noise blaring at me. So I just bolted from the house for it and stayed outside for about 15 minutes trying to make sense of what happened. And to me, I'm like, oh, Jester, you got me, you know. So it was stuff like that. But you know, the times that I actually felt like, oh, there's something like, you know, not nice or not with good intentions around. I've learned that if you tell them to leave and you say it with intent, excuse me, say it with intent in your voice, you know, and just tell them that that they're not welcome and they have to leave right now, then you know, it's like usually it takes 10 seconds and then this random emotion that just came over me just kind of falls off. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
oh, it is. I mean, I always believed in ghosts and spirits, but I never, until I met my wife, and then she was my girlfriend. But when I would go to her house to stay for like the weekend, like every other weekend, she lived in the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts, which I don't know if you heard of that, but it's basically like any
Mm-hmm.
other triangle. It's like the Bermuda Triangle or the Alaskan Triangle or the Antarctic Triangle or any of the other triangles that are around the world that are known for having creepy supernatural stuff happen there.
And
The
sorry, it's
Bridgewater,
called what?
the Bridgewater
Bridgewater.
Triangle, because it's in
Bridgewater. Okay.
Massachusetts, and Bridgewater's a town in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But and basically, Bridgewater Triangle, short history for anybody who doesn't know, the Wampatuck Native Americans were slaughtered there by white man, like everywhere else in the United States. And on his last dying breath, the chief of the tribe cursed the land because his people were
Mm-hmm.
unholy slaughtered in the swamps by white man just because they refused to give up their land. So ever since then, there's been a mass of everything in that area: aliens, Bigfoot, alien black cats. I mean, alien big cats,
Mm-hmm.
huge, gigantic, unfathomable snakes, Pudgewuckies, which are basically look like Ewoks, but
Huh.
more human-like. And I
Yeah.
mean, everything. So I mean, I've had a UFO experience down there. My wife's house she lived in before she moved with me was haunted as hell because it was built on Native American burial ground. And the things she would see in her room at night if she turned off all the lights were creepy as shit. So she never, since I met her, she never slept with the lights off. Like there's always a nightlight or two on at least.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense. Yeah.
until that point, I never had any real paranormal experiences because I grew up in houses that were built by my parents on perfectly non-tainted land. So I never had anything when I was a kid that scared me or tried to scare me other than the classic horror movies like Friday the 13th. But
Yeah.
so, which nothing like watching your first horror movie of Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan, and then you just, because you live in New York, and then you look out your window at 2 o'clock in the morning when you wake up and you think you see a hockey mask in the window.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nightmare fuel. But, but yeah, so I 100%, I know spirits exist, and I truly believe they exist, and I would love to talk to them. Working on that. Working on that. But
Well,
let me ask you this.
yeah.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it was just interesting how you mentioned that you had never had any interactions with him, but your wife grew up, just being exposed to him her entire life. So now that you're in your home and you have stuff happening with the OG homeowner, so I'm just kind of curious if it's not so much them coming to you, but if your wife is kind of a magnet to make it more possible for people to reach out. So maybe if she's like a potential reason why you're experiencing things.
I don't. I mean, it's possible. I'm not gonna say it's not possible, but she is a magnet for some sorts because she grew up when she was growing up. One of the houses they lived in for a little while was owned by John Adams, like the president. Like that's how old the house it was, and like the stuff. Her uncle would lock her and her sister in the basement because he wasn't a nice guy, and like he would leave the light off too. And I asked her like, why didn't you turn the light on then? She's like, because if you turn the light on, the stuff you see is so scary you don't want to turn it on.
Jeez.
So yeah, I mean, I told her don't ever try to get me to go to that house. Never ever try to get me to go to that house and like even see the outside of it. I don't want anything following me. But see, the reason I think that they were the OG residents that are the spirits here is because I had paranormal investigators come in and they did like a couple hour like investigation in my house, and we used divining rods, we used a spirit box, and they believe they talked to them and they believe they figured out who they were because they were responding to their names. They were responding to their names, and that we know obviously because it's in the records. And so I truly believe they were the original couple that lived here. I think they just, according to the investigators, and I can kind of see why this would be, they never had children. So they like to watch over our kids. That's the thing. That's that when we asked them that, they said yes, that they just want to watch over the kids because they couldn't have their own. So, I mean, to me, that makes sense, at least. To me. I mean, it may not make sense to everybody, but it makes sense to me. And I can fully be happy with that. And, okay. So Julie had the same thing happening with her house and a Chihuahua, which a Mexican chocolate Chihuahua. I actually kind of want to Google that when I get done. I want to Google that and see what that looks like actually. But, I mean, yeah, dogs and cats are more sensitive to this stuff. Everybody, I won't say everybody knows that, but that's a commonly known fact nowadays. And I mean, it's probably the reason I never wanted a dog because I don't want them pointing things out to me. but I mean, I love my puppies and I would never trade them for anything, even though they are messes, freaking mastiffs. They're the one's 9 months and freaking already like a full grown dog of any other breed. So yeah, I can't wait to see how big they get. So have you ever thought about making like kind of like I'm gonna say an OG horror movie about like spirits and ghosts or anything of that around that line?
Yeah. So so I currently have, well, in all, I have about maybe 10 to 11 features, one TV series I'm trying to develop. Some of the scripts that I can just grab them and shoot them. Some of them still, need work done to them. But the two that's at the top of the list that I actually plan on doing some work on tonight on one of them. The potential title is A Culpable Reckoning. And that's the story of an EMT worker that it's like they show up in the ambulance and have to deal with whatever situations may be. And this guy, he was clumsy a few times, and the person he's trying to save didn't make it. So instead of him, saying I did my best and whatever, he's having the guilt, and that guilt's going to end up haunting him and then that haunted emotion, it's going to take uh, more of a symbolic meaning as the movie plays out, being somewhat of a ghost house movie. So that's
All
one
right.
thing. Yeah, so that's one thing I'm thinking about. And I don't know, like, I'm not a huge fan of slashers just because for me it's like horror movies. I love ones that can get very symbolic. Like, not sure if you've seen the movie His House on Netflix,
I
but
have
it's
not. No.
you, you got to check it out. It's fantastic. The the camera, the image quality is just sickening. It's so good, very well acted. It's just a very complete product. But that's a perfect representation of when you watch a movie and what's scary, and what's the monster. In this story, the monster or what's scary represents something that, as you watch the movie, eventually that comes to light of, oh, so they're being they're essentially tormenting themselves, and it's being played out by this external force of of a past event that took place. So I'm usually into movies that kind of have that more psychological horror aspect to them, but I definitely have an idea for a slasher movie on that involves heavy heavy reliance on camera movement, to where people love watching horror movies, they love watching slashers, and it's like, if you've seen a couple of them, you've seen them all, and they have the typical quips and stuff that we're all kind of used to seeing. So I would like to play with the time disruption on when certain events in the movie take place and how they go, just to kind of put my spin on it.
Well, yeah, that sounds interesting. I mean, I agree. I mean, I don't want to watch a slasher movie just for, you know, like the original Friday the 13th movies, like the first three or four. There's no meaning to them. It's just literally camp counselors getting like gutted or
Yeah.
hung or burnt. But it's just, to me, I mean, yeah, it's horror for horror's sake, basically. But
Mhm.
I like the fact that I like slasher movies where there's a point. Like, even like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's a point behind that and there's imagery behind that. Like, there 100% is.
Mhm.
And, but I mean, I agree though. Things have to make sense. Like, that's why I love the Saw movies, because I love the Purge movies, because it's all the Purge movies is honestly, sadly, what I think we're coming to eventually in this world. But I mean, it's sad, but I
Yeah.
truly think it's going to happen
Yeah.
someday.
Might not be too far off of that.
But but let me ask you: do you believe in more not so spiritly entities, but do you believe in more like flesh and bone entities, such as like Bigfoot, for example?
It's, to me, with technology and just the absolute disgusting percentage of how overpopulated the planet is. It's like, yeah, if it's a flesh and bone entity, I'm like, we would have seen it by now. Like, somebody would have captured it, and it may not have been like the CIA that would just want to hide it somewhere. It could have been our cousin Bubba out deer hunting, and sees it and takes it down. So as far as flesh and blood, yeah, I'm not too keen on that, but something that could maybe materialize and just kind of go away, I would actually lean more towards believing in something like that, opposed to a creature that has been widely talked about for years and years and years, and nobody's seen it. So maybe if Bigfoot did exist, maybe it existed, but then it died, and the worms consumed it before it was seen again. So yeah.
See, so you believe more in like the ultra terrestrial theory that there are more interdimensional creatures that can come into this dimension when they want to and then leave just as fast.
Yeah, and Bigfoot can very easily, kind of fall into that category. Whereas if Bigfoot, if he's a timeless creature here on Earth. It's like, where would he go in today's age to where we couldn't find him? Like, with the again, the type of technology we have, and it's like, where I'm just struggling with making sense of how how that would happen, because I've definitely heard about like Skinwalker Ranch and stuff like that, and the phenomena that happen. But yeah, I'm just kind of
Yeah.
curious about, like, okay, how does Bigfoot get seen, and then he vanishes and goes away, and people have no idea where he went to.
Well, I mean, well, okay. I was hoping you would clear that up, because I was gonna say, I'm like, there have been plenty of sightings of Bigfoot, but plenty. I belong to Facebook
Mhm.
groups where there's new ones every day. I mean, or people reporting new ones from like 30 years ago every day. But I mean, there are plenty of places in the United States though where there's plenty of forests that are acres and acres and hundreds of acres big that something could disappear in. And I, I mean, I tend to believe that they are flesh and blood. Like, I tend to believe they are something left over from when we were Homo sapiens, thousands and tens of thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of
Mhm.
years ago. Because one, they're seen all over the world in different styles and sizes and shapes. Like, there's a Sasquatch for every country, basically. Every
Yeah.
continent has multiple Sasquatches. So something that's similar, I can't turn away. But it's also the fact that the maybe the fact they're not found is because the government damn well knows they're there. I'm sure of that, but they don't want to admit it.
Mhm.
Watch the next time a plague gets as bad as COVID, that'll be what they admit to, not aliens. It'll be, oh yeah, Bigfoot's real. We've known it for hundreds of years. We just don't say anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I
Maybe.
will.
Yeah.
I'll end it by saying this though, because Small Town Monsters. I don't know if you ever heard of them. I wouldn't be surprised if not, but they are a production company that does documentaries on different paranormal subjects,
Mhm.
and they've done 3 finding Bigfoot films now. And in the second one, they actually went to the Olympic project out in Washington, and you have to get special permission to go in this area because it's not like anybody can just walk down there. Like, it's either a government or a government like released research facility.
Mhm.
But basically, they they found nests, like rows and rows of Bigfoot nests, and these were things that were so big that no other creature would make these. A bear doesn't make a nest in the ground. Like, no other creature would make a nest in the ground like this. They were huge, which I mean, it's still on my to watch list, sadly, because I watch so many movies for podcasts that's not even funny. So it's on my to watch list still. But I will say, anybody who wants to question Bigfoots should watch Small Town Monsters documentaries, because they could teach everybody a lot of things about a lot of different things. They got some good Dogman ones too. I don't know if you ever
Oh,
heard Dogman,
nice.
but
Oh yeah. Which
I mean,
that was included in, I think, when I read up on the Skinwalker Ranch. It was kind of that same time period of coming across various things, and then you have like the gyms over in Asia and stuff like that, to where, yeah, there's this time of trying to see, okay, what's all of kind of, I'm used to the Bigfoot folklore stories and growing up, and I've seen images, but what else are people talking about? So yeah, I went through a um, short stint of trying to make sense of that.
which in the paranormal world, there's a lot of different things to make sense of. There truly is, and
Yeah,
no one can truly make sense of them all, because it's a lot of unknowns, and that's the biggest issue.
it's
So
just like what they say about exploring the universe. The more we learn, the less we understand.
exactly. I mean, but I will say it's funny that we know more about space than we do about the bottom of the ocean.
Mm-hmm. That is quite comical, actually.
Because I mean, you think they'd be wanting to know about the ocean unless they really already know what's down there and they don't want to bother it. Because
Yeah.
I've heard plenty of stories about the possibility that megalodons exist still, and plenty of stories
Mm-hmm.
about sea monsters and all that fun stuff. But what can I say? We can't prove any of this stuff until we do. And I eventually am going to have a dracontology expert on this show who is going to talk about her continual search for Champ, the Lake Champlain sea monster, and she's actually been to Loch Ness too, I believe, to look for Nessie a couple times. And I am in the works of trying to work this couple that's off the grid to coming on my show to doing a recording with me, not a live one, but a recording, because they live in a sanctuary where they look after a couple families of Bigfoots, supposedly. And they post pictures online all the time of, but they're behind. I mean, they're in foliage. They're in trees. So who knows? I mean, I can see outlines somewhat on some of them, but I want to talk to them. I don't want to say like anything else. I just want to talk to them. Like at this point, I don't want to reveal too much because they like to keep their identity secret. But
yeah,
but but Bo, I thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And
likewise, man.
I mean, it's been a pleasure. I mean, fun conversation about movies, which I love, and a fun conversation about paranormal, which of course I love because I do a show on it.
And
but
Juicy Jane ICP. So
I know. I'm still shocked by that. Come on.
Stuff.
You getting it? Oh, wait till my listeners hear this episode. I might lose a few. People hate on Juggalo still, but we'll see. I don't care if they do. If I lose them, I lose them. If I don't,
that's part of it though. It's like they're definitely not PC by design. So it's which to me,
neither am I.
Yeah, which I think that's why I kind of had that random thought, but yeah, how it synced up with you and how you brought that up, that was very weird. But yeah, like one thing I still enjoy doing is jumping on Clubhouse, which came out during lockdown. It's like a voice based chat program. Like you go into a chat room and it's you just talk to people.
Yeah.
But I love going into the roast rooms because it is the most vulgar and aggressive non-PC place you can really get to. And like, so I go in there and just listen to people just going at it. And then I go into a room where you have atheists talking to Christians and, citing philosophy and stuff like that. So it's, like I'm all for, let's see, people a bit more stripped down and, what they really think on stuff. So it's, so Juggalos definitely fit the bill for that.
Oh, we fit the bill for a lot of things that people hate, but I will say, once again, thank you for coming on. Please, once again, tell the audience where they can find you if they want to find out more about you or where they can find your movie.
For sure. Yeah. So my name is Bo Roberts, spelled B-O, and very easily enough, if you just go on social media, it's pretty synonymous across every platform with at Mr. Bo Roberts. So on IG, that's the platform I frequent the most. If you type in MRBOR, then autofill should take care of the rest. And yeah, I would love if you would watch my movie, The Great Awakening, and then come back, track me down, and send me a message and tell me what you liked about it, what you didn't like, and kind of what the ending means to you. It's intentionally left to be more open-ended, specifically because back to the Great Awakening and how, as you go through history, you have different versions of it and kind of how it changed its appearance and meaning. So yeah, do that. And you can watch it on Tubi. And it's currently being onboarded on Amazon Prime, so it's probably going to take maybe a couple of weeks for that to be viewable. But in the meantime, you can check it out on Tubi if you can sit through the commercials, which I'm on board with you, Jeremy, that if I'm watching a movie, I'm not a huge fan of them. But yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I have no choice. If it's like an old movie that it's the only place it's on is Tubi. Well, that used to be the case. I have a special device now, but we won't talk about that. I don't need the FBI knocking on my door. And as all my listeners know, you can find me on Facebook on the Paranormal the New Normal / Maniacal Music Musings podcasts with the S group. And you can find me on Twitter and the Gram as @JuggaloBastard. So please come check it out. You can see everything I do on Facebook, and my listeners should know this already. And I will be back on, I'm guessing, Monday with another paranormal interview. It's nice to have weekends off once in a while. So I want to thank my guest one more time for coming on. It's been a pleasure. I didn't know how this interview was going to work out completely because it wasn't like a medium psychic or something I'm used to talking to, but it worked out great, and I had a great conversation for an hour. So hell yeah, I'm down. I'm down like an insane clown, and we're gonna end it up right there on that one. Have a good night, folks.